continue. I
All
pledge allegiance
Allegiance to the
to the
flag,
flag of the United
United
States
States
of
of
America
America,
and to the
and to the
republic
republic
for
for
which
which
it
it
stands,
stands,
one
the
nation,
nation,
under
under
God,
God,
indivisible,
indivisible,
with
with
liberty
liberty or
and
justice
justice for
for
all.
all.
Dr. Simmons, I just got an email. We all just got an email from Commissioner Mulroney. She's running a little bit behind. She had a meeting that ran late, but she's working to get on once she's finished.
Alrighty. And I saw Alex's name. There's Alex.
He's
Here, I just don't have video.
okay.
Hi,
Oh,
Alex.
okay.
Oh, you
Great,
can hear
Alex.
us. Oh, that's good.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right, so it's just Charlie. I hope there's no issue
And
there. but-
Joan, and
Yeah.
Joan.
Oh, I'm sorry, and Joan. So has everybody had a chance to review the minutes from the last meeting?
Yes,
And are there any comments, corrections, criticisms, or other additions, subtractions, or edits that need to be made?
I didn't see any.
Would somebody like to geez.
I move we accept the minutes
Thank you.
as submitted.
Yeah, already.
Second,
Second, okay. All in agreement?
yep.
Aye, yep.
So that brings up Marie.
Sure. Oh, hey,
Hi.
Us.
Sorry, Alex.
Sure. Just some updates on the township side. I know you all were following this, a job posting. We haven't had a job posting just yet for Katie's position. I haven't heard any other updates. One county board of health update. The county council did reach out to the township managers in each municipality and let them know that they're going to schedule a meeting to meet with them individually in the near future. So although the notification came to our township manager, the meeting has not been scheduled just yet. And I don't have a time frame for that. From a COVID standpoint, our building protocols have not been updated just yet. We're working on them, and there may be a change. So if something comes up in the the meeting hiatus, I will let you all know once those changes have been updated. I would expect to go back to in-person meetings once we return, but I don't have confirmation on that just yet. Delaware County Task Force did host a vaccine clinic on Friday at Radnor Township. Their little pop-up, or not their little, their pop-up vaccine distribution days were all over the county. So we got to have one on Friday. Only 4 people came, but it's 4 more people who are vaccinated than weren't before. So we were happy to be a part of that. They were a great group working really hard. 2 things real quick. I just want to remind you all that I'll be jumping off about 6:10, but I always review the meeting. So I'll review the meeting over the next day or 2. And if anything comes up township, any questions that come up township related, I will make sure that I answer those or give some clarifications, whatever I can as far as township is related, and I'll get back to you with that. And if anything else comes up, please feel free to email me, and I'm happy to clarify some things. And then I think lastly, real quick, Dr. Simmons, we probably are going to expect some public participation tonight. And I know we don't normally have a ton of participation, so I just want to remind you they're sent a link, or there's a link available on the website that they have to register at. And once they register, they'll appear in the meeting board, so you'll see them. But just as a reminder, when you ask for public participation, just glance through the screen, and then they'll probably raise their hand electronically there, and then Ian, who is working the meeting, will control their microphone when it's their turn to speak. So I think we are going to have at least 1, maybe more residents reaching out tonight. That was the word I had this morning. So just to give you a heads up.
Thanks, Mary.
And that's in relationship to the spotted lanternfly issue?
Correct.
Okay, yeah. Well, that's
Okay.
fun. Great, that's excellent. So the question then is, should we move the public participation piece up to when we have the discussion of the spotted lanternfly? And I guess that only makes sense if we know in advance that we have people that want to join in that discussion.
The only thing is we're gonna need to limit that because of the amount of stuff that we have on the agenda, including, making sure that the student interns get their fair share of time.
Yeah, so we
But
have a,
typically it's a 5-minute public participation time. I know that we already have one attendee who may want to say a few words. So you can limit it to 5 minutes. It's what we do at the Board of Commissioners. I think it's appropriate under these meeting rules as well.
Okay.
okay. So, and nothing else from the point of view of the health officer's report?
No, unless you all have some questions for me.
Not me. Anybody else?
Nope.
Under old business, that's one of our big topics. And Joan, I hope will lead the discussion on the animal health ordinances. There is one other issue from our meeting last time, and that was our efforts to incorporate school board representation on the Board of Health. We have not been successful yet in accomplishing that, but Maura and I will meet between now and September and try and put a plan together so that when we come back after the summer, we have an executable plan to figure out how to link our efforts more closely to school board issues. Maura, anything that you want to say about that?
No, I want to apologize. It's just the end of the school year was a difficult time to kind of get these conversations started. So I was not able to move it forward. But I agree with you, Doc. We will talk to them over the summer and see if we can have somebody ready to go in the fall.
And I'll reach out to you shortly to put a plan together to do that when we can get together and lay that out. So
Yep.
that's an action item for me. And actually, in putting the agenda together for this meeting, I thought that we might try to be moving forward into next year a little more executive in the management of our meetings and our minutes. And by that, I mean including time allocations, asking people to hold the time allocations, and having a list of action items as a part of our minutes that will include covering off on as part of our old business arrangements. And with that, I'd like to ask Joan. Joan, I'm blown away by the extent, the breadth, depth, and passion that you brought to your review of your first broad and deep and passionate review. And I don't know that we have anything that we can close out in the review of animal health ordinances. But when I go through that, I think that there are 3 categories of things, I think, things that you have brought to the table that are somewhat archaic and simply not up to date in the old ordinances that probably would receive very little in the way of pushback and would be fairly easy to execute. And then there are things that are that might have some controversy involved that we would probably need some discussion to conclude. And then there are things there that seem to me to be beyond our ken without pretty significant pushback from the Board of Commissioners in terms of fines and what are the legal ramifications of the behaviors that are involved when there are legal ramifications of the behaviors that seem to be a little bit would be a little bit more challenging for us. And that doesn't mean that we shouldn't do them just because they're more challenging, but I think we need to figure out how how to accomplish the things that we can accomplish, and then have a plan of action for getting agreement on some of the other things and for how we might be able to execute. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to you, Joan, for a discussion of your review. You're muted, Joan. Joan, you're muted.
Okay. David, I'm impressed that you were able to read this beforehand because I did send it quite late, and I apologize to everybody. And I don't know how many of you got a chance to look at it. And I agree with you. There are a few different categories of what easily can be done, and then the other things that that would indicate discussion to see if everybody, how the Board of Health feels, and then going forward and bringing it to the Board of Commissioners, because some do involve significant changes. But in general, I think as a Board of Health and as a township in general, I think we all have to kind of step back and say, are we being a healthy township? And are we being an ethical township where it relates to animals? And that's obviously a big concern of mine as a veterinarian and somebody who kind of understands the issues at a level that's a little deeper than what certainly the general public understands. But should I just kind of go over what I said in an abbreviated way, David?
I think that, yeah. So here's, we have this topic, we have the interns who get 15 minutes, and then we have probably, and we might want to change the order around and do the intern project and then do the discussion of the lanternfly after that, because that also includes the public participation. So if we can maybe spend 10 minutes, 10 minutes on this, on this topic.
So as Alex had mentioned, animals and things pertaining to animal rules are in several different animal and non-animal directly ordinances. The issues that I found, seizure and redemption, does discuss animals that are seized for some reason or stray are properly kept and fed. I think that needs to be clarified, because in my understanding of different peoples and different organizations of properly kept and fed, it runs the gamut, what is considered proper in the freezer. So I think that needs to be clarified. Where exactly are these animals being housed? Under what conditions? What is the cage or run space? As far as required vaccinations of dogs and cats, licensure of dogs, section 115.2, the statement addresses vaccination schedules and when those vaccines need to be done. The first vaccine in a dog and cat is age 3 months, but there's a grace period in the state, which the township has to minimally meet and enforce, but we could exceed it, and I do think it should be exceeded. We give a 2-month grace period, meaning an animal can be 5 months old without being vaccinated for rabies. I think it should be 4 months, especially given we have a lot of, there is an epidemic that came secondary to the pandemic, or as you correctly said, David, epidemic of COVID for the US. And the epidemic is that people are just rushing these dogs up in droves up I-95 from the south and bringing all sorts of stuff up. One of the things that's at risk for being brought up is rabies, because they bring these dogs up too young to be vaccinated. So there are tons and tons of puppies crossing state lines. You all know people who've gotten them, and they're not vaccinated for rabies. And this is pure bad. So I think, making it 4 months of age, and I also had mentioned that we should, in the township, we should really discuss making it illegal for dogs coming in from the south. The reason for this is twofold. There's heartworm, which is endemic to the south and is not endemic to this area at all. Theoretically, a mosquito can carry heartworm in this part of the country, but really it doesn't typically happen. These are dogs from the south. These are mosquitoes from the south. and there's a potential for the ones up here to become infected. And then we're spreading a southern disease to this area. The other thing is hookworm. And hookworm, for anybody who doesn't know about it, hookworm causes all kinds of cutaneous, visceral, larval migrans. These things can get into people, little kids running around in a park without their shoes on. Very, very dangerous. And I diagnose hookworm constantly on a daily basis, multiple times a day. It's rampant, and it is strictly the dogs from the South. So I really think we have to look at this. This is a big public health hazard, but the other issue is that these dogs are kept in very bad conditions in these transport vehicles. I've seen these transport vehicles unloaded, and they'll put 100 puppies in a small truck with a non-air conditioned, section. And a lot of them are dead. And I've seen them dead, and it's terrible. And we do address transport of animals in one of these ordinances, and I couldn't find it, but that would make what does happen, what comes to our township, something to look at. So there's that. Disposal of excrement. I don't understand the rationale of having people pick up after their dogs using plastic that's created for this purpose. And most people do. And I think the township really needs to take a stance against that. People throw away their grocery store bags all the time. And if you look at the Radnor Township on the trails, everywhere, everyone's got these plastic holders with poop bags that were created in a factory to pick up something that is going to wash away in the rainstorm. So, again, we need to step back and say, what are we doing? And this is one of the things. So yeah, I think people should be cleaning up after their dogs. That should be kept in there. But if we're going to have a statement about that, we should also have a statement about how it's going to be picked up, either with paper or with bags that are recycled second use. Public notification of confirmed rabies cases. It just mentions like the township website, the township this, the township that. I don't know that disseminates everything to the public. And when you have a dog or a cat that is rabies, that animal is probably exposed to, up to 40 people. And we don't even know all the people to notify, but they know that they might have been exposed if they see it on Channel 6 News. So I think something needs to be added that that it's going to be made public on the local network stations. There is a statement that addresses that it's unlawful for a dog to jump on somebody. It's unlawful for a dog to bite somebody. And it addresses the action as being unlawful. The wording of that needs to be changed because obviously an animal is not subject to obeying the law. Its owner is. And when you have owner disputes, and I see them constantly. I see the same people involved in one dog fight, and both are clients of our practice, and they're like fighting with each other in the waiting room. And this one says this, and this one says this. The stories are totally different, but it's always the other dog that's at fault. Who to believe? This is not the township's job. And it discusses in our ordinance that the township will, make decisions, will make judgments on this. And this is way too complicated. It's a civil matter that should be between the individuals. And oftentimes it does escalate to them getting lawyers. And I think we need to stay away from this. It's a mess. As a vet, I stay away from it. So anyway, I've had people ask me to write a letter saying that their dog was attacked and that their dog is friendly, and it's insane. Also talks about if an animal bites, if an unrabies vaccinated animal bites somebody and it's not vaccinated, that animal will be disposed of. And that's not even consistent with Pennsylvania state law. So your dog is not up to date on its rabies, bites the next door neighbor. Based on this, that dog can
Uh-oh.
Oops.
then diagnosed. The only way to diagnose rabies is chopping the head off and, doing pathology. And that's what happens based on this. And that, as I say in here, that's not even science. That's not even proper science, because even, let's just say the dog has rabies, which it doesn't. It's not likely that it does. But let's just say it does. It takes 10 days after the bite. It's actually 5 days, but they add a 5-day cushion for the rabies to be able to be transmitted into the salivary glands and then through a bite. So if that dog is alive in 10 days, even if it did have rabies, it didn't transmit it because it wasn't in its saliva in the last 10 days, not until the last 10 days of its life. So that's the rule. So what we say here is inconsistent with the state rule and also with what we know scientifically. And let's see. I think we need to advocate spay neuter. I think the township should have a statement advocating spay neuter because of pet overpopulation. I think there already is something that we had worked on, and I didn't see where it appears in any of the regulations, that in leash-free parks in the township, unneutered males cannot be off leash if they're over 8 months of age, because there are all sorts of, sexual maturation behaviors that develop in male dogs. So they are a problem. Other dogs can tend to become reactive towards them, and then dog fights ensue. As far as noise control, again, what I say is the wording gives people who dislike dogs too much leeway to complain because people have too much different thresholds for annoyance. So we're talking about barking dogs, and it says, if the dog barks, it's considered and somebody's annoyed, then they're in trouble. But it should really be modified to something like continuous and continual barking that is ignored by the owners, so that people don't sort of rely on this phrase to get their neighbors in trouble. Violations and penalties. I think the violations for any type of animal violations start at 300. And what I said was I felt that was punitive. The range, instead of starting at 300 to 1,000, it should be $25 to 1,000, because most things are pretty minor, and high fines can result in people giving up their pets. And it happens, and I see it all the time. Use regulations. I didn't know this, but apparently kenneling and keeping dogs outside is allowed in Radnor Township. And there are even like guidelines for how far the outdoor dog kennel should be from the street and from the neighbors. I can't imagine people keeping their dogs outside in summer, winter, anytime. So I think I think that's cruel, and I think we need to get rid of that. Also,
I think that I am confused on how we're going to have a path forward. Coming back to my original comments, the list that you've gone down now so far, most of what you say is not controversial. A lot of it has to do with archaicisms. Once you start talking money, however, and courts of law, you go immediately from the non-controversial to the challenging. So how do we move this forward? Because I think you raise so many issues, many of them. Mara, please jump in.
Yeah, so obviously, many of these issues would be an ordinance change that would have to be proposed and voted on by the Board of Commissioners. Joan, I did read your document, but what I didn't do is have the side-by-side ordinance provisions.
I'm sorry, I should have included that.
No, you did great. You gave me the section numbers, but I just need to take a little bit more time. But there's certain things in there that I think that, we do need to tighten up. I think, as you said, there's a bucket of things that maybe we could just do a little tweaking of our ordinance currently to address some of the issues. And then others are going to be a little bit more controversial or take a little bit more legwork to get moving. But that said, I've been actually working with somebody who's trying to do an anti-puppy mill state level legislation, and is also looking to townships. And I'm seeing a couple of the things here that we might be able to collapse into this anti-puppy mill type of ordinance.
Wonderful. That's wonderful. I'd love to
Yeah.
work with you on that.
Oh, good. Yeah, there's something called Victoria's Law, and it's been out in Harrisburg. You can look that up, and I know the person who kind of started that, and she's been lobbying at the state level. But if townships do it, it basically is so that no pet shop or any pet retail establishment can sell animals. They can host adoption days, they can coordinate with a rescue, but they can't sell, because that's when you get into the puppy mills. But I think, like Dr. Simmons is saying, is that we have some that maybe it just takes a quick tweak of the current ordinance, and then others maybe we have to kind of get our advocates in line.
Okay.
But
All
Joan,
right.
I would love to talk to you offline and maybe just sit down and
Yeah.
and
that's-
divide these into those two areas. And then what I can do is, before I would propose an ordinance, I would talk to our township solicitor, and he could give me comparison ordinances that maybe other townships do better in this area than we do. And I can kind of shortcut it instead of having to start from scratch.
Okay. Okay.
So
All right.
the path forward is the two of you will work together offline. I'm happy to be of assistance if I can be of assistance. We'll break this down into things that we can potentially move forward fairly promptly, and then get a list of other things that will take more time, that we may require our consideration within. And I think if you can give Joan a sense of what would require new ordinances, that might be the first place where we can make the big divide among the list of topics that has to go down, and we can move forward from there. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. So I'll do a little work on it, and I will reach out to you, Joan, and we'll kind of compare some notes and
Cool.
see if we can at least move a couple of these forward quickly over the summer, and then maybe a deep dive into some of the more hefty issues going forward.
Perfect.
Great. Thank you, Maura.
Excellent. Thanks, Will. So
And there are some other things that I mentioned in here, and I'd be happy to hear anybody's, comments, or some are sort of like novel ideas, like, deer and the dogs from the South, and changing the mission or altering the mission statement. And so I'd love to hear comments, either, privately or through the group link, whichever. And we can see what things we do want to pursue, and ways to do that. And Maura will be talking over the summer. Okay.
excellent.
Yeah, sounds great.
Okay.
And it would be really useful to know from this group, what are some priority issues of what Joan presented? If there are things that you really feel will make a difference that we could start with.
So we can start to sort this out offline, and then put a pathway forward for those that we can immediately drive, those that require some discussion, and those that essentially that's the first big divide.
Okay.
All right. With that, if we may, I'd like to move the student intern project up. We're right at 6 o'clock now, and so ladies, boy, I don't want to sound like an out-of-date boomer. Colleagues.
Okay, boomer.
Well, yeah, you got to be what you are. If you can, so we had allocated 10 minutes for your presentation, and then 5 minutes for discussion. So if I can turn it over to our student interns and their guides, I'd like to do that now.
Okay, we have a presentation, so I have to share my screen.
Okay.
Okay, can you see it?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes.
Okay, so. Okay. So first we just wanted to address the problem again that you know is mental health. So first we wanted to address it broadly in the United States, and then we'll narrow it down to the problem in Radnor. So a recent study by the Johns Hopkins University does a good job at displaying the problem of mental health. So they look at the major depressive episodes, specifically in adolescents in the United States. And they measure those throughout that 12-month period, so for a year. And they split the adolescents in different age groups, and they did time trends. And in their results that they saw, there was definitely a large percent increase in the prevalence of the depressive episodes, and it is continuing to increase. And then obviously to the right, you can get a better visual. So just overall showing that the mental health issues with America's teenagers are continuing to increase. And then there's another problem that there's also like an untreated depression within the adolescents. Then just for the World Health Organization, they recognize that 50% of all mental health conditions start by 14 years of age, but most cases are undetected and untreated. So this is a time at which people would be entering high school. So it's a critical time in their adolescence.
And then just to narrow down our project, specifically relating it to Radnor, we wanted to refer back to the pay survey, like we talked about in November, and just talking about how like rates of depression are increasing within the Radnor community for the students. So mental health education is even more important. So then our thesis for this project was that while Radnor High School has implemented mental health education in health classrooms, there are still improvements to be made in the delivery of such information to students in the most effective and applicable way.
Okay, so we wanted to talk about why this problem was even worth considering for our project. So a lot of these bullet points, if you read, they kind of all relate back to students' comfortableness with discussing mental health with their peers or adults or teachers. So it needs to be a normalized conversation. And like from my experience and Suman's experience, what we've learned in classrooms, it's very extreme cases and very unrelatable, which further stigmatizes mental health and makes it hard to talk about. So if you feel like you don't like fit that extreme case, it's like, why is it worth mentioning in class kind of thing? And then if we display in class that teenagers commonly face struggles like depression and anxiety and engage in more active dialogue, students may feel more comfortable to share their experiences involving mental health. Okay, so there's a lot of literature relating to mental health out on the internet, and so this is I thought a very applicable study to our project. So basically, they wanted to test in this specifically in Canada. They wanted to see if mental health, like adding curriculum, would change their knowledge and stigma on mental health education itself. So they randomly assigned some schools and provinces mental health curriculum, and they integrated it into their class work. And they used questionnaires to measure the students' mental health stigma before and after receiving the curriculum. And the results were that the students that received the curriculum viewed mental health in a better way than students did with the controlled group. So it kind of shows that it's worth talking about in schools and health classes because it changes students' perspectives and increases their comfortableness in class. And then this is just an example of all the different, like if you go on Google Scholar, there's so much about mental health and why it's important in school.
So we also wanted to evaluate the success of our project and if we accomplished our original goals as we intended to. So one of our goals was interviewing the teachers at Radnor High School, asking health teachers to evaluate the efficacy of health classes in teaching teens about mental health. And we reached out to a couple, Miss Roslyn and Miss DiRocco, but we didn't get a response from them. So we also asked our guidance counselors how often they address students' mental health. And we successfully got into contact with Mrs. West, and she met with the other counselors. And one of the questions that we asked her was if she thinks that students come to her and other guidance counselors more often because they don't really feel comfortable in the health classroom talking about their mental health. And some of the things that she said was that the lessons in the health classes are meant to provide students with information and strategies to help them navigate the day-to-day challenges that we all face in these areas. However, health teachers aren't trained as mental health professionals, and so the health classes aren't really meant to serve as a place for students to receive treatment and support around their mental health. And I thought that part that I highlighted in red was significant because it shows that like our health teachers are teaching us about mental health and giving us like ways to, or not always, trying to give us ways to address these problems, but they're not professionally trained to do that. So like they'll tell us about these mental health disorders, but then there won't be actual like suggestions that we can implement into our life. Next slide. And then another goal of ours was to make a survey on satisfaction ratings of mental health teaching and health classes for Radnor High School students. So we did make a survey that we got feedback from Dr. Duman and Dr. Carbasi. If you could click on the link.
Yeah, I just have to, okay. Can you see it?
Yeah.
Okay.
So we just made a few questions asking them to rate their experience, how comfortable they felt, and if the things that they learned about in mental health classes were applicable to their own health, or if they weren't, what they used instead. And we sent the survey to our principal, Ms. Kafkas, and she connected us with the director of secondary teaching and learning, Dr. Bechtold. And we did talk about like possibly presenting our project and our survey to the school board for approval, but it didn't really, like we couldn't like carry that out completely, so we never got to administer our survey to everyone. So some barriers and challenges of our project was that since we weren't really in school for like 7 to 8 months, we couldn't have face-to-face communication with the administrators, teachers, and counselors that we were trying to reach by email. And so we also couldn't distribute the survey to students. And just generally, we knew that lack of proper mental health education in the classroom was a problem because we had our own experience in the classroom and we talked about it with our friends and our peers. And like I even talked about it like last month in my careers class, but we had trouble like translating those experiences into actual research and making a project out of it. So some things we could have improved are redirecting the scope of our project earlier so that we could have possibly contacted other mental health professionals and more actively seeking out meetings maybe when we got back into school. But our general suggestions for the project are to have health teachers that are trained specifically in mental health education, or since that's not as realistic of a plan to implement. Even just having mental health speakers brought into health classrooms for one of the units within their curriculum.
Okay, so we just wanted to end it with our recommendations for
Oh,
the.
I think there's a slide before.
Is there? Oh, okay.
Okay, yeah, you can.
Okay, so we wanted to share what we learned, just related to mental health and just on doing a project like this in general. So we, like Suman said, we knew that students were dissatisfied with Radnor's mental health curriculum. So mental health curriculum was something that they valued and thought was important, just like we did. And like I also said before, there's a lot on the internet proving that mental health education is essential to a well-rounded education, but there's no certain way teachers should present that in classes, is what we've also found. And finding literature and different studies was important to defending that thesis that we showed you in the beginning of the PowerPoint. And then Suman just said that, like, we learned it was difficult to separate our personal opinions and like analytical research for the project. Okay, and then lastly, we wanted to talk about recommendations for future interns. So obviously next year it'll be different, but they can meet with teachers, counselors, administrators, and other professionals. And if they want to distribute something to the student body, they have to get it approval, but earlier than what we had done. And setting a timeline in advance before starting anything is very important. And then using resources like Google Scholar and Gale resources for research are very valuable. So that's it.
Great. Are there questions?
I just had one question. When the teachers have their mental health classes, couldn't it be possible that they are open and allow students to come to them and say, you know what, I have a problem, and that teacher can direct them to the school counselor, that they could serve as a gatekeeper in their classroom and say to the students, you know, if anybody has concerns or issues, you know, just come up to me and I can direct you to the proper person.
Yeah, I think that, like, in my experience, like 10th grade, I had help in 10th grade, and teachers do that. The problem in Radnor specifically is that it's really hard to access like guidance counselors. So that's a problem.
Well, congratulations. I know it was a difficult year.
Thank
You guys did it. And that presentation, yeah, good luck. Yeah, the presentation was well done. So thank you for
Thank
sharing.
Very nicely done. I would second what Kathy just said, that it was a difficult year and a lot of challenges. I actually think your presentation creates some positive direction out of the challenges and difficulties that you have, and we very much appreciate that. So thank you, Tricia and Suman, for your contributions, and thanks for bringing it together at the end there.
Yes, very nicely done. And it was an incredibly difficult year. And, you know, you're able to pull it off. So good job, guys.
Nice job.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So the final major issue on our agenda, I wonder if I can turn it over to you, Commissioner Mulroney, to introduce for the board what it is that we have a direct ask from the township manager for some feedback that has been asked for by Wednesday. And do you feel comfortable to put this in context for us?
A little bit. We actually, and then we do have Sarah Pilling is on the line, and she's a member of the environmental council of the township and can speak to it a little bit more. But it has come to our attention that the that there is going to be a state effort to do some spraying for spotted lantern flies, and some very good information. Thank you about the chemical that is the in the spray. So I know that there's been some outreach to the state level, to the state reps, to find out who's on the list, where is the list being generated, and how do we get off of it? I'm not sure that that's like the full story. Some of you know more than I do. And as I said, Sarah Pilling's joining us tonight and can speak very intelligently about it. So if we want to have,
should we ask,
and then
should
ask
we ask
her
Sarah to jump in? You kind of jumped to the conclusion, but it feels like everybody's jumping to the same conclusion. And I did do some research myself, but it'd be very helpful if Sarah Pilling, if you are on the line, and Ian can join you in.
Yes.
Hey,
here we
Sarah.
go. Hi, Sarah. Sorry to put you on the spot a bit.
No.
But you definitely have more of the information than I do.
Just
So
put it into context. The people who are working on climate change work under the umbrella of the Sierra Club. It's called Ready for 100. And Westchester, Chester County has a group of residents who are called Spray No More. And they heard that lower areas, 13 locations in Chester County were going to be sprayed for lanternfly. The product they want to use, the Department of Agriculture wants to use, is lethal to bees, ladybugs, any kind of beneficial insect, to fish. And there is evidence of there's neurological damage to babies. So I went to a rally, did some digging, got a hold of Jana Mara, who knew nothing about it, got in touch with Greg Vitale, who was a little bit slow in responding to me because the group in Westchester filed a right to know, and it was denied by the Department of Agriculture, which raised the hackles for everybody. My question was, well, if they're going to spray in Chester County, why are they not going to spray in Delaware County? And Tridifrin is in Chester County, and it's our border on the northern side. So Jen O'Mara talked to the Department of Agriculture. They gave her a lot of runaround. Margie Reinhardt finally got some sort of information, and I want to read you an email that I just got from Greg Vitale's legislative aide. Hi, Sarah. I just got off the phone with the liaison of the Department of Agriculture, and he told me they're working on your request and should be able to provide a schedule with spraying locations in Delaware and Chester County relatively soon. It's my tone of voice. They're a bit busy this week with the budget being considered and additional products, but I was assured the information is being compiled. Once that schedule becomes available, I will be sure to immediately forward it to you. Please let me know if there's anything else I can do. My concern is that some people are freaking out about lanternfly. And having been part of Penn State Cooperative Extension and having been a restricted pesticide applicator, I had my license at one point, which I let go. My concern is that people are going to overuse it, and to hell with the fact that it could kill every ladybug, every lace fly, every bee, and is lethal to fish if it gets in the water. That the township should at least, or the Board of Health should take to the township, if I had my way, to respond and say, this is something that needs a great deal more study before these applicators start spraying. They would use people with backpacks. And I know in Kennett Township, which apparently has a lot of grapes, and so they're very concerned about their grape harvest. They're going to spray all driveways, all sidewalks with this spray. Well, then we've got roads that you have a rain and it washes off and gets into the waterways, and then you're killing the fish. I don't think it's something, in my opinion, it's not something to be taken lightly, particularly as people are sort of freaking out about bugs. I had a phone call today from a man who I know who's growing 20 pepper plants, and he had one hole in one leaf on one plant. And what should I buy, Sarah, to kill it? And I said to him, look, the plants are doing very well. Just look at the leaves, look at both sides, water them well, keep them growing, because plants do have an inherent ability to resist insects. And we have beneficial insects all over the place. So I took it to Moira and to Lisa and to Margie Reinhardt, and it's sort of evolved since then. So it looks like the Department of Ag will maybe pay attention to this. I'm a little concerned that they denied the right to know. And when they tried to get in touch with the Department of Agriculture by email, they were told that the Department of Agriculture was closed down because of the pandemic. So it doesn't ring totally true to me. So that's what we know. Greg Vitale is going to get the information as soon as he can get it from the Department of Agriculture. The Department of Agriculture is not rushing this out.
So I had an identical experience in trying. I have not gotten anything back from Department of Agriculture at Harrisburg or in the Delaware County office. I did speak to the individual on the state website who has the responsibility for lanternfly, the lanternfly part of the website. They put all lanternfly issues into a specific part of the website, and he was prompt in his response, and he had exactly the same experience that you did, which is to say, when he tried to get in touch with the Department of Agriculture, he got absolutely no response with regard to what are the plans, and was unable to get any response with regard to what are the plans. So that's three of us now who agree on that. I want to take this on from a slightly different perspective, and you touched on this, Sarah, as well, and thank you. What is the problem that you're trying to solve?
Right.
And how is the solution proportionate? Now, Joan has already sent out a document that included a recommendation that we stop mosquito spraying because West Nile virus only had 75 cases.
Right.
And
I think they said 11 in Pennsylvania.
So I'm sorry, a few number of cases, but my point there would be that although spotted lanternfly are disgusting to look at when they're adults, and they can be an issue which is aesthetic, the only real substantial issue of spotted lanternfly has to do with agriculture and the business of agriculture.
Right.
We are the Board of Health of Radnor Township, and I don't want to bite off more than we can chew, but for the point of view of Radnor Township, I believe that we have no agriculture and no agricultural business in Radnor Township, that bifenthrin does have pretty substantial potential toxicity. Human toxicity is rarely reported, requires direct ingestion. It's a possibility, but it is not a major issue. So I don't think that we're about trying to outlaw bifenthrin, but I think what you said was any toxin, if applied judiciously, has a very different set of complications than broad spraying. But my perspective would be that first, I also took some time to speak to Chris Ward, who is responsible for pathogens in, I don't know if you know John B. Ward and Son, but they're a long-standing mainline arborists. And I talked to another individual in the same game who didn't really want me to use his name, but they both said that the spotted lanternfly panic is a panic, that the bugs are probably not going to descend en masse as a horde of locusts, but rather they are a nomadic and migratory species, that the places that had them 3 years ago are less likely to have them now, that there are actually ways that you can protect the plants in your own garden without generally using toxins that are pretty darn harmful to pollinators and other beneficial insects that are not necessarily proven to be terribly effective against spotted lanternfly. And he was in complete agreement with what I think, what I know, I believe, and what I think, based on the nodding of heads I'm seeing here. I think Radnor Township should act to request as great a restriction of spraying of bifenthrin as possible, and that in Radnor Township, the protection of individual ornamental plants can be handled by the owners of those ornamental plants,
Yep.
including the township and the
Yep.
Shade Tree Commission, and it should not be undertaken as a broad spraying of a potential toxin.
I
I
have a
agree.
question. What are the state roads? So my understanding of this document is that the state is going to spray on state roads and railways. What are the state roads in Radnor Township?
Can I?
Yeah, lots of them.
Lancaster, Conestoga,
Lancaster, yeah,
Radnor,
Lots
Chester,
of them. Okay.
Bryn Mawr Avenue, lots of.
yeah.
Route
A lot of the main
20, Route
thoroughfares
3,
are
Route
owned by
30.
PennDOT.
So how do you want, what is the ask of the township manager, David, by Wednesday? What is it we need to accomplish here tonight for the
They
township
want
manager?
feedback, and specifically from us, the feedback related to human health. But I don't really think. I think that I'm more than happy to draft a letter commensurate with the things that I just said. If I have support from the township supporting the Board of Commissioners in any effort that they might make to push back on the Department of Agriculture for broad and general spraying in the township. Feedback. Bill White asked for feedback from the Board of Health to the Board of Commissioners.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
I think your remarks are right on. I don't understand what problem we're trying to solve.
Bingo.
What are we doing here?
The number of I'd like somebody to point to a tree that died in Radnor Township last year as a consequence of spotted lanternflies. Not very many. And the other part of it is, if the township really wanted seriously to take on spotted lanternfly, I think any resources that we dedicated could be dedicated to the removal of ailanthus, the tree of heaven, which is it's a horrible weed anyway. And if that were removed from the public lands, and people were encouraged to remove those plants from their own gardens, as well as undertaking some of the non-toxic ways of controlling lanternfly in your own yard. And you can just go to the Penn State Extension, not the Pennsylvania Department of Agriculture, but the Penn State University Agricultural Extension. There's a wealth of information about things that you can do. And they are disgusting and they are ugly, although they're actually kind of beautiful too in certain ways. But they're not a threat to human health. They're not a threat to the economy of the township. They're not a threat to the buds themselves, are not a threat to the animal life or the in general to the plant life in the township. And so undertaking a broad spraying of a broad-based insecticide with a lot of potential harm to our environment and potential harm to human health is probably an out of proportion response.
So can you draft that? Because I think they're introducing an unnecessary risk into our environment that doesn't need to happen for.
Yes, I can.
So why don't you just draft that and then
I'll draft it.
Send it out. Yeah, because he Wednesday, I guess,
tomorrow
is
morning. I'll send that out for comment.
Okay.
I'll expect comment by close of business tomorrow, because I would like to send it over to Maura. Would you like this to go through you or directly? How would you like me to manage that?
Yeah, please put me on it. But you could go directly to Bill White with it as well, as the head of the Board of Health, but include me and I'll have a side conversation with him as well.
So colleagues on the Board of Health, expect sometime tomorrow morning to see something a draft coming in from me, comments as quickly as possible so I can get that out, and in the requested time for a Wednesday response to Bill White.
Thanks.
Thanks, Sarah. And I'd like, Ian, can you put me on? And I'd like to thank you all very, very much. My real concern is that people who don't know any better, who just want to kill insects, will just go after it. There's no doubt that the mechanical tape around the tree and then the wire over the tape
Yep.
so you don't trap birds and butterflies, and the removal of the ailanthus.
Yep.
I
That's
also believe in hand-to-hand combat as opposed to chemical warfare.
I see
exactly.
people with vacuum cleaners vacuuming them up. So-
So you know those little torch sprays that you do in the weeds and the cracks in your sidewalk?
Yeah.
They crispy critters.
Oh, stop.
Can I just add something and ask a question? What I want to add is, pyrethrins, they accumulate in fat. They persist in our bodies if they get into our body, and they also persist in the environment. And so this is nothing to be taken lightly. We're on the same page about that, but that might be integrated and incorporated into our statement on that. And then I have a question for Sarah. Do you know if bats will eat these spotted lanternflies? Because maybe people could put bat boxes in their yards.
I have no idea, Joan.
Okay.
And our bat
Absolutely.
populations are in trouble anyway. I mean, the bat
Sure
population has absolutely plummeted. And if bats eat these insects and they have bifenthrin in them, are we going to be poisoning more bats? Which
Exactly.
I
Good
do
point.
believe that I believe the top predators are at risk when you broad spray broad-based insecticides, and that does tie into your comments about mosquito spraying in general. But I also think that we do have an opportunity at this moment in the rush. We might not get there, but I think that a lot of people don't get that just buying a poison for every problem and using a poison for every problem is probably not a wise way to get a sustainable environment. So we can look at this as opportunity.
Okay.
So with that, do we have any more topics that we need to cover? Anything that anybody needs to raise as of right now? Because we are running beyond, and I like to be respectful of people's time. And if I hear nobody jumping in, I want to thank everybody. We do have some action items for over the summer. Joan and Maura and myself for the next couple of days, and I'm going to be reaching out to Jane and Lisa, maybe to do some talking over the summer about what we can do to prevent some of the pitfalls that we had this year going into next year's intern program. And I'd like everybody to think about what are the big topics that we would be best served to focus on in after the summer, starting in next year. So with that, I want to thank everybody
Thanks, David.
and wish
Everybody
everybody
have a nice summer.
a great
Good job, students.
wish
Yeah.
everybody a great
Yeah.
summer, and ask for somebody to move that the meeting be adjourned.
I
So
move that the
moved.
meeting be adjourned.
Second,
Second.
and by
Bye, all.
acclamation, everybody have a great summer. Thank you, everybody, for all your
Good
efforts.
summer. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Summer.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
All right, so that was the meeting.
Wait a minute.